Around campus these days, professors and academic counselors are saying the same thing that we hear in the first reading from the prophet Malachi. Lo, the days are coming. Evildoers, in university circles, ought to be people who haven't been studying, learning, doing their assignments. Lo, the days are coming, because the final exams are in a couple of weeks. But for those who have been doing what is desired to learn, the rays of justice will be shining on them. Justice that they did the work and they received their reward. The liturgical year next Sunday comes to an end with the last Sunday of Ordinary Time, which is also the feast of Christ the King. The liturgical year, which will then begin the next week after that, 2 weeks from this Sunday, is the beginning of the, if you want to say, the church's semester, the learning semester. It's a full year semester. And we've been learning from Luke's gospel. Of course, we had the time off for Lent and Easter. But for about 20 weeks, 21, 22 weeks now, we've been at the school of Luke. And today's reading is not easy to hear. It's long and it's gloomy. It's interesting because Jesus looks at the temple with all its adornments and votive offerings and its glamour and glory, and he says, this is not going to last. I will raise it up on the last day, on 3 days. And of course, then as students, the Jews who have been following Jesus, not totally open to his teachings, they ask the question, a good question, and we have a question and answer then. When is this going to happen? This temple took 46 years. We're still building it. You're going to tear it down and build it up in 3 days? It's a good question. Question and answers. You know what's boring? Answers. Because they're saying, it's like news. You know, when you hear good news, you say, oh, what else is new? The new is only new for a little bit. What's new after what's new? So Jesus is giving a final exam. And it's a final exam to those of us who have been sitting in Luke's school of Jesus and the Luke school of discipleship. And we have questions, but Jesus has the exam all laid out for us. And of course, we would like, well, what does that mean? And when's that going to happen? And what's this? The school of Luke, as with the other gospel writers, teach us about a Jesus that moves through his life of fidelity. And the exam is about how faithful can you be? Can you follow Jesus into the darkness, into suffering? And it's the gospel, I don't have to go through it, but I'd like you to read it or listen to it. It's about earthquakes and wars. When are you coming, Jesus? Well, he's saying, during those following me are going to have to go through what we'll call the final exam. It's a yes or no exam, really. Not many multiple choice, not many essay questions. It's, are you still faithful? Now, and I think I mentioned it last week, there's a way of watching Jesus, and every time you read him in Scripture or hear him at the liturgy, you say, I'm not that. I can't do that. Any teachings that Jesus say, I can't do it perfectly. I'm not even, I had a niece, maybe I mentioned, a niece that said, when you were asking her to do something, she said, I can't want to. I can't want to. I can't want to follow Jesus through all the invitations. But at the end of the exam, there's a little bottom line, and that's the one I'd like to point you to. By your perseverance, you will experience justice and you will experience life. By your perseverance of learning. But there's a way of this, that the good news is not good news. That Jesus is pointing at you and you're not enough. And you can read Scripture all the time in terms of not Jesus, but yourself and myself. So Jesus is calling me to turn the other cheek, walk the extra mile, love my enemies, pray for them, give all away, follow Jesus, let go. And everything that Jesus invites us to is not easy. And so following Jesus can be a negative experience of my faith and hope. But let's go back to fidelity. We're watching a Jesus who is faithful, and the roots of fidelity are in gratitude, are within the grounds of gratitude. And he kept being grateful for who he was. That's the message. Be grateful for who you are, even though your experience of yourself is fragility, inconsistency. But I won't say infidelity. Fidelity is perseverance in constantly being open and receiving what is my daily bread. Receiving the invitations, but the invitations of Jesus are not indictments, are not demands that I don't belong unless I keep them perfectly. Perseverance within the context of the call and the fragility of my response. That's perseverance. Perseverance is not through total success, total surrender, totally following Jesus. Totally is a word we have to throw away. Wholeheartedly, forever. We're too inconsistent for that. But then what is infidelity? I think infidelity has to do with being disappointed and envious. That is, I will be unfaithful to Jesus or to this person or that group or movement. I will be unfaithful when they are a disappointment to me, and I am a disappointment because I let it be a disappointment. There's two disappointments there. A person can disappoint me, but I can be faithful because I'm not disappointed to the point of I'm disappointed in myself. I can't stand myself. So fidelity is to the reality of my poverty, of my inconsistency, how I am tempted to disappointment. Everything can be a disappointment. Everyone, every group, the church, the government, teams, teachers, priests, spouses, children. Everything ultimately is a disappointment because we want perfection. What do I do with the disappointments? And the other is envy. I will join that group or join that team or leave this person and join that person. No longer that friend, that's not my spouse. I can get better than you. And then I won't experience my disappointment in myself. So this is the final exam. We're at the end of the liturgical year next week, but it's the beginning of the end. It's preparing for the final exam. And the final exam is not 100%. The final exam is perseverance. Trusting life, trusting the grace of God, trusting that I can be faithful even within my experiences of fragility. Fidelity doesn't mean perfection. It means perseverance. And infidelity is no perseverance. I'm going to create the new, obtain the new. And I will be envious, not just of her or him or them, I will be envious of a better self. I am disappointed because you show me my fragility. I'll get someone who won't show me my fragility. A group, a school, whatever. It's perseverance with myself and the goodness and the call of God. That's our justification. That's our holiness. And our perseverance is how we pass the liturgical and the exam of Jesus. The exam is not for judgment. The exam might be for recommitting ourselves to being faithful.